Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our online poetry series here at Stockbridge Library. Our theme this season, Sparks in the Dark. And with us today to share their poetry is Lisken Van Pelt. She'll be in conversation with John Gillespie, who started this program for the library back in 2020 with the intent of bringing a few weeks of poetry into people's homes when the pandemic first started, and here we are in 2024, still having lunchtime poetry sessions. John, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just a few words about our poet, and then I will turn the program over to the two of you. Lisken Van Pelt is a poet whose work can be found in Conduit, South Carolina Review, Cartsaluni, and Upstreet. She has earned awards and honors from the Comstock Review, the Atlanta Review, and Cider Press. She has a chapbook, Everywhere at Once, and a full-length book, What We're Made Of. Lisken, welcome.
I think you actually have the old bio there. I sent a newer one to John.
Yeah, I sent a new one to her, so I sent out a
That's all
revised
right.
one.
It'll do. We'll just travel back. We'll just time travel
Please.
back for a moment here.
Yeah, sure. Please adapt as necessary and tell us about your accomplishments. We'd love to hear. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the full-length book was 2016, What We're Made Of. There was a chapbook in 2022, Letters to My Dead, and I think probably that's all I need to add.
Well, good. Well, welcome, everyone. Wendy, thank you for the library hosting. This is our 150th reading. Our goal was to do 4 readings in Poetry Month in April 2020. And Lisken, we didn't know when to stop. There were no guardrails. That's the problem. There's a poem in there somewhere. Yeah, when you start and you can't stop. Yeah. So, no, it's great. It's, I think it's a great opportunity to hear new works and have a poetry conversation. So let's start with, what was your reaction?
Confetti for the 150th.
Yeah, this is confetti. Yeah, that's a lot of. Kathy, we only have a little bit of confetti. We only have a $2 budget, so we have a very little bit of. Yeah, we're going to double the budget next year, go up to $5 or something. Yeah, all good. So what was your reaction to the theme, Igniting Sparks in the Dark?
Well, it was, I enjoyed thinking about it a little bit, and I came up with thinking about it as acting in 2 ways. That first of all, poetry illuminates the dark, right? As in it is an opportunity for us to really look at the what is, right? To really perceive what's out there and hold it in our vision and in our presence. But what's interesting to me is that it's not only necessarily the dark as in the negative, right? But more critically, the dark as in the unknown or the not understood, right? What we in the course of our more frantic pedestrian days, we don't take the time to really perceive in the first place, and then try to understand, try to inhabit. So poetry's power is that the ability to really to name, to feel what is, to look at it, to see squarely what's going on. So that aspect of it is interesting to me. Then the other half of it is this notion of the poetry as the spark that illuminates our way out of that, right? That in your little sort of description, mission statement of the theme, and so you had the thing about moving from the dark towards the light, right? And I'm not sure that necessarily happens in a sort of negative, positive kind of a framework with all poems, but I think it does happen with the best of poems in the sense of illuminating, right? What not only what's there, but also maybe some passages forward from what we're perceiving. So those were sort of the ideas I was playing with. So the selections I've made today are all ones that I think play with those concepts in some way or another, and work with both the idea of illuminating the unknown, the seeing, and then also that capacity to act and move forward from that.
Yeah, I think you're the first person so far that said this year, illuminating from the unknown. I find that really intriguing because there is, I think, a great, sometimes unknown entity or living being in poetry that reveals itself. So, no, I really like that illuminating from the unknown.
I think often we write to find out things about ourselves, about what we think, about what we're experiencing, what we're actually, discovering ways to think about what's happening and what we're doing and who we are. So in that sense, it's often, if not always, grappling with some element of unknown.
Great. So please share some of your work with us.
Okay. I'd actually like to begin with a poem that's not my own. This is one of my favorite poems, and I thought of it immediately upon the theme because I think it speaks to it in various ways. And this is a poem by Pablo Neruda. It's called La Poesía, which means poetry. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with him and probably with this poem itself. But if you weren't, Neruda was a Chilean poet, and he began writing as a child. And this poem is a poem about his birth as a poet, how poetry, as he put it, came to him sought him out as a child, and his early experiences with that. And he refers in this poem to poetry as una quemadura, which is a burning, right? So this sparks in the dark, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
it's fire, right? We're playing with fire as poets. We know it's dangerous, right? So he talks about it as una quemadura. So I thought I'd read this poem. I'll read it in the original Spanish for those of you that have Spanish, because I like to honor the original language of a poem, if at all possible. And then I'll read. I've given a shot at translating it, so I'll read my translation afterward. So let's see here. La poesía de Pablo Neruda. Y fue a esa edad, llegó la poesía a buscarme. No sé de dónde salió, de invierno o río, no sé cómo ni cuándo. No eran voces, no eran palabras, ni silencio. Pero desde una calle me llamaba, desde las ramas de la noche, de pronto entre los otros, entre fuegos violentos o regresando solo. Allí estaba sin rostro y me tocaba. Yo no sabía qué decir. Mi boca no sabía nombrar. Mis ojos eran ciegos. Y algo golpeaba en mi alma. Fiebre o alas perdidas. Y me fui haciendo solo, descifrando aquella quemadura. Y escribí la primera línea vaga, sin cuerpo, pura tontería, pura sabiduría del que no sabe nada. Y vi de pronto el cielo desgranado y abierto, planetas, plantaciones palpitantes, la sombra perforada por flechas, fuego y flores, la noche arrolladora del universo. Y yo, mínimo ser, ebrio del gran vacío, constelado a semejanza a imagen del misterio, sentí parte pura del abismo, rodé con las estrellas. Mi corazón se desató en el viento. Okay, in English, poetry. And it was at that age, poetry came in search of me. I don't know where it came from winter or a river I don't know how or when. No, it wasn't voices, wasn't words or silence, but it called me from a side street, from the branches of the night, suddenly among the others, between violent fireworks or returning alone. There it was without a face, and it touched me. I didn't know what to say. My mouth didn't know how to name. My eyes were blind. And something was beating in my soul, fever or lost wings. And I made my own way, deciphering that burning. And I wrote the first vague line, vague, bodiless, pure nonsense, pure wisdom of one who knows nothing. And I suddenly saw the heavens unfastened and open, planets, palpitating plantations, the shadows perforated, riddled with arrows, fire, and flowers, the winding night, the universe. And I, smallest of beings, drunk with the great void, stars arranged in the likeness, the image of mystery, felt myself a pure part of the abyss. I wheeled with the stars, my heart unleashed into the wind.
Wow.
Yeah, so that
That's how he starts. Wow.
that yeah, I know about it. Of course, he wrote it later. I don't think those were his first lines.
Yeah, that was yeah.
But I love how, he talks about not only the poetry calling to him, but also then that when he writes those first lines, he has this experience of the universe just opening, and that it's that the shadows are perforated with arrows, fire, and flowers, right? So there's the sparks in the dark, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, sparks. I think that's an explosion in the dark.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Of course, that's the danger of starting with reading somebody else's poem, is then I've got to follow that.
Yeah. Now you got to top that one. We got to raise the
yeah. Was it like restart? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I will read some of my work despite that. I'm going to start with some poems from my collection, What We're Made Of, which is themed around the notion of quintessence. And quintessence is has two sort of applications. It's the medieval notion of the fifth element that is supposed to comprise the substance of all the celestial bodies, and to be latent in all things, right? That's the sort of medieval conception. And then, but it's also an astronomical notion of a form of dark energy. So the collection plays with both of those. So I did go back. I've read for this series. This is my third time reading in this series, and I did go back and check to see what I had read from that book before, and I chose ones I had not read before. So
well, there you go.
This series. So these will be new to this particular set of recordings. So I am going to read a few that I thought were relevant. I will start with one that's called Disintegration. At the first break of blue sky, the birds grew quiet. Coincidence, of course, as the crows made clear a moment later, but still a silence long enough to draw my eyes up. The triangle of soft, astonished blue appeared like all the grace we have imagined. Forgiveness of our sins, a holy trinity, transcendence like the pointed peaks of worshipped mountains, Fuji, the Matterhorn, Popocatépetl, thinning with the air into a purity beyond our grasp, relying as we do on what we see and touch. But we are small ourselves as any stone. What we have been spirals behind us in a vortex of shed electrons, detritus of what we can no longer can ever be again. It happens at every moment, like the clouds scudding, like a train in the hands of an unknown engineer drumming across tie after tie. It's an enduring lack of silence, our disintegration, like rain that drips onto one leaf from another higher in the canopy, like the crows near constant braggadocio. It's a sound the possum in our woods ignores as she sleeps under the brightened sky, But when she walks out tonight, her pale stripped tail will shine in moonlight and trace behind her the places she has passed.
Very nice.
All right, next one's called Keeping My Eyes Up. Thought my dad might be here today, but he's not. It features it. Keeping my eyes up. When I was 7 and ardent for official status as a safe bicycle rider, I feared failure at staying on the straight line until Daddy advised keeping my eyes up, looking far into the future. I rode directly towards it, jubilant. Today, I rose at dawn for a first ride in a brand new landscape, discovered nothing but gray-white sky draped over morning. So I guessed that hills still covered, their heft and contours conjured whole ranges at the end of the white line I rode on, reveling as usual in the occluded. A mountain ridge set to reveal itself, an ice cream truck sure to be just around the corner. Back then, I rang my handle-mounted bell over and over, pressed my thumb hard into the contoured metal, announced my pure delight in what was coming. This morning, I watched it clear slowly from north to south, my faith soon to be rewarded. Where I'd envisioned mountains, blue, clear to the horizon, wide open. That was out in Napa Valley. Next one. Oh, I didn't even realize I'd done this. So that featured my dad. This one's dedicated to my mom.
Yeah, you gotta have equal time here. It's an equal time.
There we go. All right. This one's the Hubble effect. In a life, the holes. Parallel lives where you were born a boy. Your blood didn't surprise you. Your grandfather didn't dive into an empty swimming pool. Places you didn't stay, filled with your absence. Ghosts of your footprints finding their way like small iguanas who have left their tails behind on gray cracked pavement, mown sward, crumbling gravel. So much abandoned in an accelerating universe, and still we get larger. We bring our absences with us. Spaces we didn't occupy, comets we dreamed of touching, notes we might have heard had we flown in another direction. We're large as distance, worlds in our ears, our afterquakes like repercussions spreading into places no one, not one of us, nothing had been before.
Very nice. So Lisken, in our first year, we had a poet who had written poems for 8 or 9 of her family members on the and 6 of them were on the show at the same time.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, wait, you 3 stay over to the left and you 2 stay. Yeah, it was
Sort of glad you're on Zoom at that point, right?
yeah, this is a Zoom Family Feud. I think that was it.
Oh dear. All right. Well, I have a couple of family members here, but I don't think I'm reading any poems about them, so they're safe. I have just one more from this collection, and then I'll move on to some more recent work. This one, I just couldn't resist with the theme of Sparks in the Dark, because this one's called When the Fireflies Come Out.
Good.
Right now, it's still winter. Water falls muted below ice, singe of sun and earth's core equally out of range. Fireflies unheated like faded stars. Hand over hand, days will pass like beads on a rosary until June, when we will seek fields of matted grasses, warming roadsides, culverts below bridges, and will swear we see whole constellations fallen. I am a clumsy hulk to their neat wings, precision flashing, yet I answer to their signals. If I listen hard, I could almost hear the lights click on and off. I never thought to wonder where they winter, their fires smoldering under snow, nestled in thistle root, larvae wriggling to the tremor of fox tread or pigeon boots. I hadn't even thought of them for months, until today, a young boy mentioned them. My birthday is when the fireflies come out, he said. My breath caught in the jar of my chest.
Very nice.
Okay, I wanted to read something from my chapbook, last year, Letters to My Dead.
That is to my dad. I love it.
Thank you. And actually designed by my brother who is on this call.
Yeah.
And his illustrations, also his artwork. There's fewer in this book that are directly relevant to the theme, but I did choose one that touches on the notion of seeing, which I referred to when we talked about the theme at the beginning. So this one's called Frost. Winter's coming. Most of the trees are bare, and this morning, for the first time, a heavy frost ghosted my car. By the time I drove to the store, it had evaporated, but oh, was the sky heavy over the cemetery on my way, bullet gray. And of course, someone was being buried. It made me sad, seeing the lines of cars. It's strange, isn't it, that we think of ourselves both as leaving and as being left. Our bodies, us, giving up the ghost, letting it go, but also us, the ghost, free. My friend Catherine took her husband's ashes on pilgrimage back to the places he had loved and left some in each spot, his remains remanded to the bits of earth that witnessed him. Choppy a bit, but it gets at the seeing and the being. I'm sorry, but it gets at the seeing and the being seen that is living. The frost didn't disappear. It just turned into sky. I still see you. I wanted you to know. All right. Switch gears
Lisken,
here.
all your poems so far were all outside, which
Oh,
is kind of
interesting.
unique. Everything's
Interesting.
outside. So it's good. It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah,
We
I
had one
do.
poet, where half the poems were in her specific yard. So I felt like it was like a zoological poetry reading. Yeah. No, it's amazing how people, it's I'm just noticing it's great. I feel like there's a visual landscape out there you're giving us.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And now I'm scanning the remaining title to see whether I'm inside or outsider. I think a lot of them are, I don't know. Some of them are sort of in history, which is a different kind of landscape, right? Because what I'm going to do next is read some poems from my newest collection, which is called How Many Hands to Home, not yet published. I'm working on that. Publishers. But anyway, I was going to say I'll read most of the rest. I'll read are from that collection, and then I'll just end, if we have time, I'll end with a couple of more recent uncollected poems. So in How Many Hands to Home, the first section of the book are actually all the poems in there are fire related in some way. So it seemed certainly relevant, both the dark of destruction and the light of the flame. So I thought I'd read several from that section first. This first one is called After the Dying, and it's a wildfire related. After the dying. Nothing but gray. Cross-hatched gray earth, gray sky charred to the horizon through gray scale branches. Then comes rain, cupfuls in drops, and the rivers reborn, soil learning again to drink, violets rising to split gray into green and purple. The ash trees still stand bleak in their nakedness, but grass grows once more between them. Soon a deer, who survived the fires but lost her world to their darkening, moves in, foraging, mouth open to receive it. A banquet of color, its light touch bathing her tongue. Next one is, And If It Is Beautiful. If I knew whose fault the fire was, would I delete my memories of sleepless nights raging against the spark that started it, and turn my fury towards the hapless human whose negligence or curiosity or malice or lack of understanding smoldered into flame, then soot and ashes? Or would I dream of blazing immolations, theirs as imagined penance, and my own in cremation after death, our bodies shrinking and joints flexing into our last pugilistic pose? No life was lost in the inferno, only spaces shaped by the lives lived in them. Helen's jar of wooden spoons, George's armchair in the library. Lives unknowing who to blame, or if that person might deserve more sadness than anger. Their own peace burned through as they stood watching flames that must have been, in their own way, beautiful.
Hey, Lisken, in the shows this season, we take kind of a break at the top of the hour
Sure.
to let the audience ask questions or provide some comments.
Okay.
So let's do that right now. Anybody could unmute themselves and just questions, comments. Obviously, I've interjected a few, so just feel free to. I mean, I think it's a nice part of the program for the poet.
I'll just add, can you tell us a little bit more about this new book that you're shopping around? What you told us about the first section, but what tell us a little bit more about how it comes together.
Sure. So it's a 5-section book, and it kind of works through. I guess in a way, it's aligned to the theme of the Zoom here, in that it kind of moves from dark to light in a way. So the first section it deals with a lot with the fire. The second section has I don't have it in front of me, so this is all. It moves from deals a lot with migration, with the notion of what it is to leave a home, what it is to sort of to create a home in new contexts. The gosh, you're pressing me here. This is good. And then later in the book, there's also sections that deal with what it is to be an American. So that notion of home sort of in the present moment, and the difficulties of that, the challenge. Some of it deals with a little bit more of the present moment. And then the final section, and I will read a couple of those coming up, is more about the moving through all that to embrace the what is, with love, right? That's ultimately that's our way out in the end. So I'll actually read it. I don't have everything from every section, but from each of the sections, and I will read a few from that last section.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, here I'm Annabelle. I don't think I'm visible, but it's just lovely to be with you, Lisken, and to hear these wonderful poems. And I've spent the day in my garden, and I'm filthy, and I've come in, and I just love listening to you and seeing you and thinking about RC and life, and that's it. Nothing else to say.
Thank you.
Lisken from London. It's lovely to hear you, to see you, and I'm enjoying it all the time. And I'm very grateful to you for telling me about the Neruda poem, which I did not know.
Lovely.
So I'm looking forward to hearing more.
I'm glad to have introduced you to it then. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, and I'm interested in this idea of darkness and light in the context of poetry. What I'm experiencing is as a writer thinking that you're writing into the light, and discovering that you're actually writing into darkness. And so I'm finding these ideas and the construct of the discussion really interesting. Wonder how that plays into what you're working on now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is interesting because we sort of automatically group darkness with negative, right? But it's also just part of it's part of what is. I mean, half of our planet is in darkness. It's also void of that kind of judgment, really, right? So so this notion of whether we're writing into light or darkness, I think we sort of just have to let it be, right? And engage with all of it.
Hey, John, Annabelle wants you to say something so she can get a view of you or put your camera on. So we have, yeah.
If he's in a position to put his camera on, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have a spotlight on a 10.
Maybe
Yeah.
at the end. Oh, there he is.
There he is. There you go, Annabelle.
Hi there. It's nice to see you all. Thank you, Lisken, for your reading.
All right, shall I keep going, John?
Yeah, I keep going. Yep.
Okay. All
Wait,
right.
unless Susan's your sister, right?
Oh, yes, she is.
Yeah, unless Susan wants to reveal any, we highly praise any family secrets, things that should be in poems that aren't in. This is part of the humor part of the poetry hour. We like anything, Kathy, work on that. You're up in a couple of weeks. Any stories that need to be told that aren't told that could be poetic, we want to hear.
I think Lisken's covering it all.
She's covering it all. Oh boy. Lisken, you got a get out of jail free card with that one.
Yep.
And I also wanted to mention that Deirdre had a question in the chat, but maybe we can come to it on the next question session.
Oh, why don't we just do it now? Because the question was, do you like to choose a theme for poetry collections, or does a theme emerge? That was from Deirdre.
That's a good question. And I think it varies. In the case of my first collection, I'm not sure whether choosing a theme or it emerging is quite the description. I think it was more finding it from the poems that I wanted to collect. In the How Many Hands to Home, which I'm reading from now. Oh, in the chapbook was I didn't know initially I was writing a chapbook, but it became quickly evident because that was definitely a group of poems I was working on. They were letters to my dead, right? So that was I guess sort of announced itself right up front. In the case of How Many Hands to Home, the overall theme and arc of the book took some work to discover, work and help to discover. But the sort of sub themes I was conscious of working on, not necessarily all in sequence or together, but I knew that I had certain obsessions that I was sort of cycling through and working around. That I had some sense would come together into something. So it's a mix. And I'm working on one project now that I do know that I think might emerge into a chapbook possibly, and that one is thematic from the start. I know what the material is that I'm dealing with there and wanting to explore. So it can vary.
Oh, great. Yeah, so yeah, go back to sharing some of your work. It's great.
Okay, sure. So I had one more poem from the first section of How Many Hands to Home, a little bit different in nature. This is one of several poems I have in the book that I call remixes. This one is Remix the Paper Brigade. And by remix, I mean that they are a form of found poem. They are all the text from these poems originated in historical reports or news reports, or in one case, a diary entry. So they're all language, they're found language. But I took that language and have really scrambled it. Actually had fun using some, I don't know, he's Robert, I think, is familiar with this website called the Lazarus Project, where you can kind of put in text and it'll chop it all up for you. And you know, it's a remix. And so I made use of that and then worked with the language further and ended up with several pieces. So I thought I'd share one of those. This one's called Remix the Paper Brigade. And it's a World War II story. It carries an epigraph from the source material, which was a CBS News report. So the epigraph is as follows. The horrors of the Holocaust were met with various forms of resistance. A resistance group nicknamed the Paper Brigade in what is now Vilnius, Lithuania's capital, risked death, smuggling artwork, books, and rare manuscripts, hiding them in underground bunkers. Extraordinary story. So this text is from that report. Scrambled. Gun of totalitarianism, bounty, but of totalitarianism, evil filled in. So to the ghetto. The ghetto had other ideas. Dug up the survive out of the brutal looting, dug up the survive, this culture, these boxes, materials, the ghetto. Years it encompassed. This is the absence that could never emerge from hiding. They set aside the scooped empty heroes, homemade wheelbarrow and shovels, the building organ, the church, now tunnel. Anything in, saved. Anything needed for kindling, Baroque arches, wiped out country. Dusty iron knocked down, the rubble, a manuscript. Deliverer upon faded, saved. Collection of works rescued and lives of beauty walking. Book palace, an absence that could never rubble. Erasure knocked down, became human of the burnt contraband. Surviving pages insisted books had blood. Vanished book, the wing. The other ideas, floor to the gun, rooms upon rooms, paper could never, wasn't bounty, bellows the war, wiped out nexus of poetry, what you're not allowed. You weren't taught books. No, no. Picture those Jews encompassed, amplified by Chagall, insisting feet down, assessing and prescient, their hiding places, fearing the so says who, heard whispers, documents would, were killed. The evil is full, the it encompassed, Yiddish voices, the unexplored absence that stains. This unexplored book absence out of the burnt readers, contraband community. These are the surviving pages. Homemade diapers, sewn Nazi, sewn Red Army, the us there, awaiting renovation. Who we have, the scooped fragments. All right, so I'll move on. The next two also touch on the Second World War, but this time from the perspective of family history, and they're from the second section of the book. This one's London Asks to be Remembered. Remember Aunt Pam, it says. Remember Elsa. Remember even your great-grandmother you never knew, her shape shrinking to no more than smoke as the bombs she hid from in the underground continued to echo, refusing her any peace but death. My mother had been a child then, dumb to language that could speak such things. Besides, of war, what is there to say? Life went on. And later, when I was a child in London too, I held my mother's hand, passing her old flat, walking the same paths in the same parks. On Sundays, I behaved my way through dinner with great aunts and uncles, and hovering all the absent ones. Pam's Timmy, Their father, Frederick, dead young. Their mother, Mama Lisken, she of the bombs, she for whom my mother named me.
Hmm.
And this one about Aunt Pam that was in that, and Uncle Timmy that was in that poem. Okay, it's called Visible. Family lore suggested heroism. Uncle Timmy sacrificed himself to save the lives of his squadron. I searched the web. RAF Group Captain, missing, believed killed, March 1st, 1942, Java. Find no evidence one way or the other. Mostly blind by the time I knew her, my great aunt Pam endured, listened to BBC World News on her black transistor radio. Her husband, neat in his uniform, framed on the bookshelf behind the tea caddy. My husband is scrolling news as I research, shows me pictures of next generation fighter jets, their advanced stealth airframes and avionics. Nearly invisible, he marvels. We don't know what kind of bomber Uncle Timmy flew. At 90, Pam moved into a tiny bedsit at a rest home. On my final visit, she declined to speak of herself, instead asked after my work and my husband. I brought freesias and set them on the windowsill above the clanking, ineffective radiator. I recognized nothing from her home but the radio and Tim on the bedside table. When I left, she walked me to the top of the stairs, feeling along the wall, and waited there in her slippers until I called up that I was safely landed at the bottom.
Hmm.
All right, one from the third section of the book, and then I'll read a few from the final section. So this from the third section is called How to Become a Raft. When you meet petrels, watch how they rise from the ocean into the sky and float there. Their horizon, land. Climb to the top of the waves. They remember only wind, but you've seen water lapping onto shore, thinning into nothing. You'll see jellyfish, all the kinds that ever scared you, lions' manes, blooms of medusas. Lash yourself to the air with their loose tentacles. They've been detached a long time and no longer sting. Remember when you were 9, a moon-white beach, dark water glittering. Coat yourself in phosphorescence. Remember, you wanted to be the ocean, to gleam like that.
Very nice.
Okay, and then I mentioned that the final section of the book kind of comes around to, so how do we deal with all this? Because there's a lot of difficult material in the book. And it really comes around to embracing that what is, right, with love, right, with the role of love in that. So I'm going to read 3 poems from there, and then finish the reading with a couple of newer uncollected poems that feel relevant to. So this one is called Analemma. And you may or may not know that analemma is the figure 8 pattern that is results from plotting the position of the sun in the sky from the same point at the same time measured through the course of a year. So if you photograph the sun from the same place every day for a year, it will form this figure 8. Okay, so that's called an analemma, which is the title of it. Today, the sun is a victory, victoriously returning to the same place it was a year ago, heirloom from the earth's past, air weaving the fine flax of light arced by our curvature, Vatic messages from our star. Tomorrow we will be here, and then here, and wherever the sun spins us as it shrinks into itself. I have marked its position each day, elliptic and tilt, ecliptic and, wait, I am leaving out right. I am reputing the location of the moon. Let me not omit the moon, its return 13-fold over the sun, with us at its center. sunlit and moonlit, our planet's species woven in constellations, waxing and waning. And I too, fusing and cycling, refusing to leave the orbit of my life, each day a victory. And then this one is called Prayer in the New Year. This is a somewhat older poem. I actually wrote it when I was teaching high school, so it makes reference to high school students. Prayer in the New Year. I am nothing if not happy, grateful to be, which is itself a statement of prayer. Here in this garden that is the world, the beautiful and the ugly, bliss in shadows and danger in broad daylight, the perpetual challenge to propel yourself from what you know to what you must do. This too, another way to say what prayer is, reaching for what is right and true. Though truth is unsayable, lips and hands meeting find a grammar that suits them, verbs melting into nouns, the isness of a kiss. In my dreams, I hear words that no longer exist upon waking, spend my days trying to write them down. This striving to pray. Except I pray, how can I live with this stunning? The bees nosing at the roses, the girls and boys I teach, torn to the core by fear and incredulity. This sky, again, this sky, open without end. I walk in the valley of the shadow of death and of life and of life. Look at this blade of grass. I have stepped on it and it has not broken. And find altars wherever I go, stone wall, desk, the human too, breastbone, the dip of a shoulder. That is, I find places to give thanks to you and you and you. We can choose to hear as little or as much as we wish. Thus much today is asked of you, thus much tomorrow. I am called on at least to witness, and to that I will kneel. I will press my hands together. I will bow my head to the floor. I will clap twice to honor the spirits of the dead and of the living. And then last one from this book, it's called Ode to the Universe. It's kind of a companion piece to that last one. And writers among you may enjoy hearing the sort of generative practice I used for this, which was I wanted to write an ode. I picked the universe. I thought, okay, so if I think about the universe, what's the one vowel sound and the one consonant sound that I feel is most fitting for the universe? And of course, for the vowel sound, I came up with O, right? What else? And for the consonant, it was so I had right? And so I played with those sounds and let them help me generate some language and move through the poem. So this is Ode to the Universe. Because why not? Oh, most opalescent everything, mine of every known mineral, every unknown element, every imaginable, oh, and then some. Because you're the only modest proof we have of, well, almost anything. Maybe not so modest. Enormity inviolate, embodied, a giantess beyond our immortal scope. Because you birth horizons, mermaids, muddy brooks, black holes. Because of silver, magnets, homes. Because I've loved in you, whole lifetimes, moved by the smell of hazelnut or dough rising, roused by a lifting murmur, do, re, mi, as I work tuning fork, song in motion. Because you let the moon foreshadow us, our growth, our fall, our need for orbit. Because you hold us, every molecule. Okay, and then as promised, just finishing up with a couple of newer uncollected poems that felt related. This one is called Declaration, because what's more spark in the dark than falling in love? And yet it can be frightening too, right? So it's the dark as well. So this, to a friend of mine, declaration. Joy is never anything but good, I tell my friend. The air blossoming into sugar and the world unwrapped. How could experience be any more marvelous? Beth, you have been offered the pleasure of a heart to share, a gift that can teach you to see through your own being to birdsong and ocean and all the gentle wreckage of being alive. You tell me he makes you laugh, and you enjoy that. I can attest that this joy is lasting and sweet. You are afraid. Very well. That bite on your tongue, that vertigo, might that also be joy? And then finally, this one, I think there are letters in my filing cabinet from strangers.
Letters to your filing cabinet?
I think there are letters in my filing cabinet from strangers.
Oh,
That's the title. Just yesterday, the date of my birthday appeared in the newspaper. Not consequential, just the date of a meeting of a committee set to report on some findings, but my heart gave a little leap. I realize I do not know your birthday. Perhaps it is in one of your letters. Perhaps I would find it if I were to open the drawer of my black cabinet. No, I think you did not ever tell me your birthday. I think you did not ever tell me your name. Your letters are signed with a sweep and a loop and a rising line like summer cresting. Perhaps you were born in summer, or at its almost being, field of goldenrod not yet yellow, winged stalks beginning to dream of flowers. I am thinking of how you held your pen above the page, considering your words to me, how the sun fell on your face as you turned to gaze out the window, your kitchen clock suddenly audible, as if counting the cadence of your thoughts. How far your words traveled, how far whatever you wanted to say traveled. Perhaps your letters are still in their envelopes. I think if I were to open an envelope, I would hear ocean as if holding a shell to my ear. I would hear the whisper of a hawk gliding. I would hear the clock, and faintly the tip of your pen drawn across your paper. I think your paper is fine, a premium linen, not quite white, but soft cream. Why did you first write to me? When? I do not even know where to send an answer. I think yours are signed in water. I think yours are signed love. Perhaps I will receive another on my birthday. On my birthday, I will wait, black filing cabinet singing behind me. On my birthday, I will walk out into the morning air.
wow, very nice, very nice.
I guess we went back outside at the end.
I think we all have to write you a letter now because it's your birthday. Is that you have a homework assignment?
Sure, I'd love that.
Great. We're almost near the end of the hour. Anyone else have a question, a comment? It's been, Lisken, it's been, fantastic to have you read. I always enjoy it, and I always enjoy Pittsfield, Mass. The locals reading. So, anybody else comments, questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the reading so far, Lisken. Lovely poems. My grandparents escaped from Vilnius in Lithuania, so I really appreciate and was so moved by your found poem.
Thank you. I didn't know that about your history, so thank you. I'm glad you feel honored by it.
Yeah. Anybody else?
This is Bob, just a quick comment. So I really appreciate your ability and your willingness to embrace joy and beauty. I have a good friend who has a 10-year-old son, and he was listening to a Zoom anthology reading. And he said, "Mom, is this a contest of sad?" And so it's really lovely to hear joyous poems, and it's great to see you, Lisken.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, that was Megan. I saw that. It was
Yes, I loved it.
her kids come up with the most amazing things, but that was, yeah, on the mark. I'm glad to have you a little bit of a counterbalance to some of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody else before we sign off?
For me, I just like to thank all of you for being here. It was really a pleasure to have you as listening. Thank you.
And follow up, Lisken, thank you very much for sharing your work with all of us.